The scrapyard stretched as far as the eye could see, a sprawling wasteland of discarded technology and forgotten dreams. It was the kind of place that people only visited when they were desperate, and Jayla Torres had been desperate for years. A mechanic by trade and an inventor by passion, she had a knack for salvaging treasures from the junk that others had long since abandoned. Today was no different. Jayla wiped the sweat from her brow, her dark curls clinging to her face as she adjusted her goggles. Her tool belt jingled with every step as she navigated the narrow paths between towering heaps of scrap. "Let's see what we've got today," she muttered to herself, clutching a handheld scanner that emitted a low hum. The device beeped sporadically, signaling traces of energy in the piles of twisted metal. Most of it was low-grade, old droid parts, half-melted engine coils, and the occasional intact battery. Then, something caught her eye. Nestled under a tarp of synthetic fabric, partially buried beneath a collapsed pile of solar panel fragments, was the outline of something different. Something sleek. Something alien. Jayla pulled the tarp back with a grunt, revealing the gleaming surface of a spacecraft unlike any she had ever seen. Its hull shimmered faintly, shifting between colors as if alive. Strange symbols were etched across its surface, glowing faintly in the dim light. The design was elegant and seamless, devoid of the rivets and bolts common in human-engineered vessels. "What the hell is this?" Jayla whispered, running her fingers along the cool, smooth surface. The metal felt strange lighter than it looked, but with an unyielding density. Her scanner lit up with a flurry of readings that didn't make sense. Jayla's eyes widened as she circled the ship, taking in its details. It was relatively small, about the size of a long-haul shuttle, but it exuded an air of sophistication that hinted at advanced technology far beyond anything humanity had developed. She found what appeared to be an entry hatch and traced her fingers along its edges, searching for a way to open it. As if responding to her touch, the hatch hissed and slid open, revealing a dark interior illuminated by soft, pulsating lights. "Okay, this is definitely not standard junkyard fare," she muttered, her heart racing with a mix of fear and excitement. She grabbed a flashlight from her belt and stepped cautiously inside. The interior was in disarray. Panels had been torn loose, and wires dangled from the ceiling. A faint hum of energy coursed through the ship, but it was weak, like a dying heartbeat. Dust and debris covered the surfaces, but Jayla could still see the craftsmanship, the alien consoles and displays that flickered intermittently, the seats molded to a form she couldn't quite identify. Jayla's mind raced. How had this ended up here? Who or what had built it? And why had it been discarded? She knew one thing for sure, this was a find of a lifetime. "Guess I've got myself a new project," she said, a small smile tugging at her lips. She took out her tools and began to assess the damage. Hours melted away as Jayla worked, lost in the intricate alien technology. The ship's systems were complex, and she had to rely on both intuition and trial and error to make progress. She managed to restore partial power to the main console, which displayed a series of alien symbols she couldn't decipher. Still, the faint glow of the ship's systems filled her with hope. As she worked, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. She paused and glanced around the scrapyard, but the only sounds were the distant clanging of shifting metal and the occasional whistle of the wind. Unbeknownst to Jayla, high above the scrapyard, a figure cloaked in shadows observed her every move. Its elongated eyes glowed faintly as it watched her labor. Zorax, a Kelvarian pilot, had abandoned the ship weeks ago after deeming it irreparable. He hadn't expected a human to stumble upon it, let alone attempt to revive it. For now, he decided to wait and see what this curious human would do. Back inside the ship, Jayla finally leaned back, wiping grease from her hands. The console was fully powered now, its displays glowing brighter. A soft hum resonated through the hull, as if the ship was waking up after a long slumber. "Welcome back," she said softly, patting the console as if it were a trusted companion. She had no idea what she'd just gotten herself into, but she couldn't wait to find out. Jayla Torres had never backed down from a challenge. Over the years, she'd turned rusted droid frames into fully functioning helpers and outdated hoverbikes into speed demons. But the alien ship before her was in a league of its own. It was not just broken, it was incomprehensible. Yet, as she stared at its glowing console and intricate mechanisms, she felt an electric thrill. This wasn't just a repair job, it was a puzzle, a mystery, and a dream wrapped in one sleek package. Her workshop became a hive of activity. The alien ship occupied the central space, its faintly luminescent hull standing out against the grimy walls and cluttered shelves. Jayla had dragged in every tool and gadget she owned, including a few prototypes she'd built but never used. The hum of her plasma torch and the rhythmic clicking of her multi-tool filled the air as she worked late into the night, day after day. Unlocking the ship's secrets, the first hurdle was the power core. It was unlike anything she had ever seen, a crystalline structure encased in a sphere of magnetic energy. Its faint glow suggested it wasn't completely dead, but it was weak. Jayla spent hours examining it, using her scanner and improvised tools to try and understand its workings. Finally, she realized it wasn't out of power, it was blocked, as though something was suppressing its energy flow. After carefully disassembling part of the housing, she found the culprit, a shard of metal lodged in the crystalline matrix. Removing it was nerve-wracking, one wrong move, and she could destabilize the entire core. But when she finally succeeded, the core flared to life, filling the workshop with a brilliant blue light. The ship responded immediately, its systems powering up in a cascade of whirs and beeps. "Yes!" Jayla exclaimed, punching the air. The ship hummed softly, as though sharing her excitement. Learning the language restoring power was only the beginning. As the ship's systems came online, its central console displayed rows of alien symbols and elegant, flowing script that looked more like art than language. Jayla's translator software struggled to make sense of it, returning garbled phrases and nonsensical words. Frustrated but undeterred, she started cataloging the symbols, matching them to the ship's functions through trial and error. Over time, patterns emerged. She learned that a symbol resembling a spiral controlled the ship's navigation systems, while another resembling an arc activated its life support. She kept a notebook filled with sketches and translations, her understanding growing with each passing day. The ship, in turn, seemed to adapt to her. Its controls, once unresponsive, began to respond more intuitively, almost as if it was learning from her as much as she was learning from it. A helping hand or claw one evening, while Jayla was rerouting damaged circuits, she heard a soft chittering sound behind her. She spun around, her plasma torch raised defensively, and found herself face-to-face with a small, spider-like droid. It had a metallic body and multiple glowing eyes, and it waved one of its appendages at her as if in greeting. "What the hell are you?" Jayla muttered, lowering the torch slightly. The droid clicked and whirred, then scuttled over to the exposed circuitry and began working alongside her. Though cautious at first, Jayla quickly realized the droid wasn't a threat, it was part of the ship's repair systems, reactivated when she restored power. She named it Skitter and welcomed the extra set of claws. Tools? Whatever they were, they made the work go faster. The awakening. After weeks of labor, the ship was finally taking shape. Its hull gleamed where Jayla had repaired the damage, its engines hummed with potential, and its interior systems were nearly functional. The console now displayed a steady stream of data, some of which Jayla could even read. One night, as she connected the final circuit for the navigation array, the ship seemed to come alive in a way she hadn't expected. Lights flared to full brightness, and a low, melodic tone resonated through the cabin. The console projected a holographic map, displaying a web of stars and planets Jayla didn't recognize. "What is this?" she murmured, her eyes wide. The map rotated slowly, highlighting one particular star system with a pulsing golden light. Jayla reached out to touch the hologram, and the ship emitted a series of clicks and tones, almost like a language. She felt a strange connection to the ship at that moment, as if it were trying to communicate with her. She placed a hand on the console. "You're not just a machine, are you?" she whispered. The ship's lights dimmed slightly, as though in response. But not everything was smooth sailing. Jayla started noticing strange anomalies, power surges, faint signals from the ship's communication array, and, occasionally, the feeling that someone was watching her. She dismissed it as paranoia, chalking it up to exhaustion and her excitement over the project. She didn't know that she was being monitored. A silent observer. High above, hidden in the shadow of a derelict orbital station, Zorax watched Jayla's progress through a cloaked drone. The Kelvarian pilot had been skeptical when his old, obsolete ship had activated. He had expected to find scavengers ripping it apart for scrap, but instead, he found her a human mechanic who had not only restored the ship but seemed to breathe life into it. Zorax leaned back in his seat, his elongated fingers drumming thoughtfully on the armrest. The ship had been a failed prototype, abandoned when its AI system had been deemed too unstable. Yet here it was, responding to this human as though it had found its purpose. "Fascinating," he murmured. For now, he would wait. But soon, he would make his presence known. Back in the workshop, Jayla stood before the ship, exhausted but exhilarated. It wasn't just a project anymore, it was a partnership. And though she didn't know it yet, her journey was only beginning. Jayla stood in the cockpit of the restored alien ship, her heart racing as she stared at the controls. The holographic star map shimmered in the air before her, its golden marker pulsing with quiet insistence. After weeks of labor, the ship was ready, or as ready as she could make it. But as she placed her hands on the console, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was about to step into something far bigger than herself. "This is it," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the soft hum of the ship's systems. Skitter, her trusty spider-like droid companion, clicked encouragingly as it perched near her feet. Jayla took a deep breath, slid into the pilot's seat, and activated the engines. A deep, resonant thrumming filled the ship, vibrating through the hull. Outside, the junkyard lights flickered as the ship's systems drew power, and for a moment, Jayla thought the entire scrapyard might go dark. "Okay, let's see what you've got," she muttered, her fingers moving over the controls. The symbol she'd painstakingly learned over the past weeks lit up as she pressed them, and the ship's AI emitted a series of tones in acknowledgement. The thrumming intensified, and the ship slowly began to rise. It wasn't a smooth ascent. The ship wobbled, its propulsion systems sputtering as they adjusted to the changes in gravity and atmosphere. Jayla gripped the controls tightly, her heart pounding as the ground below grew smaller. "Come on, don't fall apart on me now," she urged. Finally, with a roar that rattled the workshop walls, the ship stabilized and shot into the sky. Jayla let out a whoop of triumph as the scrapyard disappeared below, replaced by the endless expanse of stars. The star map's guidance once in orbit, the ship's AI displayed the holographic map again. The golden marker pulsed steadily, drawing Jayla's attention. She had no idea what it was pointing to, but her curiosity burned brighter than her caution. "All right, mystery system, let's see where you lead," she said. She set a course, and the ship responded with a smooth recalibration of its engines. The AI emitted a series of soft tones, almost like music, and the star map zoomed in to reveal a detailed route through the galaxy. Jayla engaged the hyperdrive, bracing herself as the ship surged forward. For a moment, the stars outside stretched into streaks of light, and then the ship entered the swirling blue void of hyperspace. Her exhilaration was tempered by nerves. She was hurtling through uncharted space in an alien ship she barely understood, following a map she couldn't fully read. But for the first time in years, she felt truly alive. An unexpected detour, the journey was far from smooth. Just hours into hyperspace, the ship's systems alerted her to a disturbance. A sharp tone echoed through the cockpit, and the holographic map flickered erratically. Before Jayla could react, the ship dropped out of hyperspace, lurching violently as it was pulled into a nearby asteroid field. "Great," she muttered, gripping the controls as the ship careened toward a cluster of jagged rocks. She slammed her hand on the propulsion override, and the ship's thrusters roared to life, pushing it into a sharp turn that narrowly avoided a collision. As she maneuvered through the asteroid field, Jayla noticed a faint signal on the ship's scanners. It was weak but unmistakable, a distress beacon. She hesitated for a moment, torn between following the map and investigating the signal. "You've already taken one crazy risk," she told herself. "What's one more?" She adjusted course and followed the beacon, weaving through the asteroids with increasing confidence. The ship's agility surprised her. It responded to her commands with precision, as though anticipating her movements. Finally, she reached the source of the signal, an abandoned mining station nestled within a massive asteroid. Its exterior was battered and scarred, and its lights flickered weakly. Jayla brought the ship in for a landing, the docking clamps engaging with a satisfying click. The mining station. The airlock hissed open, and Jayla stepped onto the station, her flashlight cutting through the dim interior. The place was eerily quiet, its corridors littered with debris. She followed the faint signal to a central chamber, where she found the source of the distress beacon, a damaged drone lying amidst shattered machinery. "Looks like you've seen better days," Jayla said, crouching to examine the drone. It was heavily corroded, but its core was still functional. As she tinkered with it, the drone powered on, emitting a weak beep. Before she could celebrate her small victory, the station shuddered violently. A deep, mechanical groan echoed through the walls, followed by the unmistakable hiss of escaping air. "Oh," Jayla muttered. She grabbed the drone and sprinted back to the ship, her boots clanging against the metal floor as the station began to collapse. She barely made it back to the cockpit when the asteroid split apart, sending debris hurtling through space. "Time to go," she yelled, slamming her hands on the controls. The ship's engines roared to life, propelling it out of the debris field just as the station was consumed by a massive explosion. A new ally. Once safely away, Jayla examined the drone she had salvaged. It was of alien design, similar to Skitter but larger and more robust. As she connected it to the ship's systems, it displayed a holographic message in the alien language she had been learning. The message was brief but clear. It was a warning about the golden marker on the star map. Something dangerous awaited at the destination. Jayla frowned, her excitement tempered by unease. She had set out to explore the unknown, but now it seemed the unknown was far more perilous than she had anticipated. "Guess we're in this together now," she said, patting the drone. It beeped in response, its lights flickering faintly. As the ship re-entered hyperspace, Jayla couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. She didn't know that Zorax was closer than ever, his own ship trailing hers in stealth mode. For Zorax, the time to reveal himself was drawing near. For Jayla, the first flight was only the beginning of a journey that would test her courage, ingenuity, and trust. Jayla stared at the holographic map, her fingers hovering uncertainly over the controls. The warning from the salvaged drone played in her mind on repeat. The golden marker that had drawn her into this journey wasn't just a waypoint, it was a danger zone. Something waited for her there, and she wasn't sure if she was ready to face it. But turning back wasn't an option. Curiosity had gotten her this far, and she wasn't about to abandon the adventure now. "All right, mystery marker," she muttered, setting a course. "Let's see what you're hiding." The ship's engines flared as it surged forward, streaking through hyperspace with a smoothness that Jayla was finally beginning to trust. The drone she'd salvaged from the mining station home she'd nicknamed Beacon whirred quietly beside her, its holographic display monitoring their trajectory. Skitter perched on the console, clicking anxiously. "Relax, you two," she said, more to reassure herself than them. "What's the worst that could happen?" Arrival at the marker, the ship dropped out of hyperspace, and Jayla's breath caught as the destination came into view. Floating in the void was a massive, derelict station, its architecture a blend of alien and organic design. The structure pulsed faintly with an eerie green light, its surface etched with the same flowing symbols she'd seen on the ship. It was ancient, and yet something about it felt alive. Whoa, she whispered, leaning forward in her seat. The ship emitted a low, melodic tone, as if acknowledging the station's presence. Beacon projected a new message, warning, active hostile presence detected. Jayla's heart skipped a beat. Hostile presence? Great. Couldn't have mentioned that earlier? The station loomed closer as she guided the ship into a docking bay. The airlock connected with a heavy clang, and Jayla armed herself with her plasma cutter and a portable scanner. Stay here, she told Skitter and Beacon. Skitter protested with a series of frantic clicks, but she waved it off. I'll be fine. Probably. Inside the station, the air inside the station was stale but breathable. Jayla moved cautiously through the dimly lit corridors, her flashlight cutting through the shadows. The walls seemed to pulse faintly, and she couldn't shake the feeling that the station was watching her. She followed her scanner's readings to a central chamber, where a massive console dominated the space. The symbols on the console glowed brightly, their patterns shifting in mesmerizing rhythms. Jayla approached cautiously, her fingers itching to explore its mysteries. Before she could touch the console, a deep, resonant voice echoed through the chamber. Step away. Jayla spun around, her plasma cutter raised, and found herself face to face with a towering figure. It was an alien, its elongated form cloaked in shimmering armor that seemed to ripple like liquid. Its eyes glowed faintly, and its expression was unreadable. Who the hell are you? Jayla demanded, trying to mask her fear. I am Zorax, the alien said, his voice calm but firm. And that station is not yours to tamper with. Jayla's mind raced. Wait, you're the one who left the ship in the scrapyard, aren't you? Zorax tilted his head. I discarded it because it was dangerous. You should not have reactivated it. Well, sorry to ruin your day, but I did, Jayla shot back. And it's been saving my ass ever since. Zorax's eyes narrowed. You do not understand. That ship was a prototype, designed to interface with this station. But the experiment failed. The station's AI is unstable, corrupted. It lures ships here, only to destroy them. Jayla's stomach dropped. And you didn't think to disable it? I tried. Its core is self-regenerating. Destroying it would require a direct interface with the ship's AI, and that would risk complete assimilation. Jayla glanced back at the console, her pulse quickening. So what happens if we leave it alone? Zorax's expression darkened. It will continue to grow. It will consume any technology within range, and eventually, it will expand its reach. A daring plan. Jayla weighed her options. She could turn back and leave the station to its fate, or she could take the risk and try to stop it. I've come this far, she said finally. I'm not walking away now. Zorax steadied her, his expression inscrutable. You are either brave or foolish. Probably both, Jayla admitted. But I didn't fix that ship just to let this thing destroy everything. Zorax sighed and stepped forward. Then I will assist you. But if you attempt something reckless, I will intervene. Together, they approached the console. Jayla connected the ship's systems to the station, her hands moving quickly over the controls. The ship's AI emitted a series of melodic tones, and the station responded with a deep, resonant hum. As the connection deepened, the station's lights flared, and the chamber shook violently. Symbols scrolled rapidly across the console, and Jayla struggled to keep up. What's happening? She yelled over the noise. The AI is resisting, Zorax said. It is trying to assimilate your ship. Jayla gritted her teeth. Not on my watch. The final confrontation. Using every ounce of knowledge she had gained from restoring the ship, Jayla rewired the connection, forcing the ship's AI to override the station's corrupted systems. Beacon projected data streams, helping her navigate the alien code, while Zorax defended them against the station's security drones. The chamber became a whirlwind of light and sound as the AI battled for control. Jayla's fingers flew over the controls, her heart pounding. Almost there, she muttered, sweat dripping down her face. With a final surge of energy, the ship's AI emitted a high-pitched tone that echoed through the station. The lights flickered and dimmed, and the vibration stopped. The console went dark, and the ship's systems powered down momentarily before rebooting. Jayla collapsed into a nearby chair, breathing heavily. "Did we do it?" Zorax nodded slowly. "The station is neutralized. For now. New horizons." Back on the ship, Jayla and Zorax reviewed the data they had collected. The station had been part of a network that extended far beyond the galaxy Jayla had known. "This is just the beginning," Zorax said. "There are more like it. Some active, some dormant." Jayla looked out at the stars, a spark of excitement in her eyes. "Then I guess we've got work to do." Zorax raised an eyebrow. "We?" "Unless you've got better plans," Jayla said with a grin. Zorax sighed, but couldn't hide the faintest trace of a smile. "Very well. But this time, we do it my way." The ship's engines roared to life, and together, they set off into the unknown, two unlikely allies bound by a shared purpose and a thirst for discovery. The galaxy was vast, and their adventure had only just begun.